They thought this was our final goodbye, my dog Max and me, on the morning of my execution. But when his teeth bared and a thunderous growl ripped from his chest, I knew instantly. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the real killer, the man in the guard's uniform who framed me. But I only had hours left to live. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you exactly how it all began. The air in my cell that morning was colder than the concrete floor I stared at. It was thick, heavy, tasting of bleach and finality. 7 years. 7 years I'd spent in this box, watching the world fade into a memory. I was Daniel, but that name didn't mean anything here. Here I was inmate 734, a 30-year-old black man, branded a murderer, waiting for the state to erase me. The clock on the wall was my executioner, each tick a hammer blow against the anvil of my life. I thought about the man I used to be, working a steady job, laughing with friends, taking my German Shepherd, Max, for runs in the park. Now, that man was a ghost, and I was just a body waiting to be disposed of. When the warden came, his shoes echoing down the silent hall, I expected the routine questions. Last meal? A phone call? I had played this moment over in my head 1,000 times. But when he stood before my cell, his face impassive, the words that came out of my mouth surprised even me. "I want to see my dog," I said, my voice raspy but clear. The warden's eyebrow twitched. The two guards behind him exchanged a look, a mix of pity and contempt. A dog, of all the things a dying man could ask for. But they didn't understand. In those 7 years, every human connection I had was severed. Friends stopped writing. Family moved on, worn down by the shame. The world outside had judged and convicted me long before the jury did. But Max never saw a monster. In his eyes, I was just his person. His loyalty was the only truth I had left in a world made of lies. A steak dinner couldn't give me peace. A final phone call would only be filled with goodbyes I couldn't bear to say. I needed to look into a pair of eyes that held no judgment, no doubt. I needed to feel, one last time, that pure, unconditional love. It was the only thing that could give me the strength to walk that final mile. I watched them through the bars as they debated. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read their faces. The younger guard shook his head, probably talking about security risks, protocols, the absurdity of it all. The warden just stood there, his fingers steepled, considering it. I knew it was a long shot. Bringing an animal into a maximum security prison on execution day was unheard of. I braced myself for the refusal, the final door slamming shut. Then an older officer, Ramirez, a man who sometimes gave me a quiet nod, a flicker of humanity in this place, said something. I saw the warden's expression soften, just for a second. He requested my file. I knew what was in it. 7 years of perfect behavior. No fights, no trouble. Just a man quietly marking time. And a small note in the personal effects section. Owns a German Shepherd named Max. After what felt like an eternity, the warden gave a short, sharp nod. Yard only. 10 minutes, he called out. A wave of something I hadn't felt in years washed over me. A terrifying, heart-pounding mix of relief and dread. I was going to see my boy. And then I was going to die. The walk to the yard was surreal. After years under the dim, yellow glow of fluorescent lights, the pale morning sun was blinding. It felt warm on my skin, a forgotten sensation. Each step in the heavy prison boots felt like a drumbeat counting down my final moments. The cuffs were loose on my wrists, a small courtesy that felt like a mockery. I wasn't going anywhere. I stood in the center of the empty concrete yard, surrounded by gray walls and razor wire. A place designed to crush the human spirit. And in that moment, it felt less like a prison and more like an arena, with me as the final spectacle. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Then I heard it, the creak of the far gate. My breath hitched. 2 officers walked in, and between them, a flash of black and tan. It was him, Max. He was older, the fur around his muzzle dusted with gray, and he moved with a slight stiffness in his hind legs that wasn't there before. But his ears were sharp, his head was high, and his intelligent eyes were scanning the yard. Then they found me. His entire body went rigid for a second. His ears shot forward. A low whine escaped his throat, and his tail began to move, a slow, hesitant wag that quickly picked up speed, beating like a frantic metronome. The officers glanced at the warden, who was watching from the tower. A single nod. The leash went slack. He surged forward, a blur of fur and muscle. I dropped to my knees just as he slammed into my chest, knocking the wind out of me. He was licking my face, my neck, my hands, whining a sound of pure, heart-wrenching joy and grief all at once. I buried my face in his thick fur, breathing him in. The smell of earth, of autumn leaves, of home. It all came rushing back, a flood of memories from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. For a moment, the prison disappeared. There were no walls, no guards, no death sentence. It was just me and my dog, reunited against all odds. I held him tight, whispering his name over and over, my tears soaking in his coat. But then, something changed. I felt it before I saw it. His body went stiff in my arms. The whining stopped, replaced by a low vibration that rumbled deep in his chest. His tail froze mid-wag. He pulled his head back, and his gaze shifted, locking onto something behind me. The rumbling grew louder, a deep, guttural growl I hadn't heard since he was a pup, cornering a raccoon in the backyard. It was a sound of absolute, primal warning. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. I turned my head slowly, following his gaze. He was staring at a man standing 10 feet away. Officer Jenkins. Tall, stiff, with a face like carved granite and eyes that never seemed to blink. The growl intensified, and Max's upper lip curled back, revealing a flash of white teeth. A few other guards shifted nervously. "Control your dog." "Inmate," one of them muttered. I placed a hand on Max's back, feeling the tension coiled in his muscles. "Easy boy," I whispered. "It's okay." But it wasn't. I knew my dog. Max never, ever reacted this way without a damn good reason. And as I looked from my loyal, furious dog to the cold, expressionless guard, a question I didn't know how to ask began to form in my mind. Jenkins stood there, his posture rigid, refusing to meet my eyes or acknowledge the dog that was ready to tear him apart. He just stared at a point on the wall above my head, his jaw clenched tight. The air in the yard crackled with a strange, unspoken tension. The joyful reunion was over, replaced by a scene of pure hostility that no one understood but me and Max. And maybe, just maybe, Jenkins himself. After a few tense seconds, another guard barked an order, and Jenkins turned on his heel and walked away, disappearing back through a side door without a single backward glance. The moment he was gone, the growling subsided, but Max remained on high alert, his body still a coiled spring, his eyes fixed on the door Jenkins had vanished through. The other guards started moving me toward the gate, the 10 minutes already up. But Officer Ramirez, the one who'd always shown me a sliver of decency, hung back. He walked over, his eyes on Max. "Your dog's got a good nose," he said, his voice low. "What's his problem with Jenkins?" I just shrugged, afraid to voice the wild thought that was taking root in my mind. "Max doesn't growl at people for no reason," I said carefully. Ramirez frowned, a deep line forming between his brows. "Funny thing," he continued, still speaking quietly. "Jenkins was on duty the night you were arrested. He was one of the first responders on scene, but his name never appeared in the final report. He was taken off it." The words hit me like a physical blow. The world tilted on its axis. Jenkins was there, at my house, the night my life ended. Why wasn't it in the report? Why would they remove a responding officer's name? My mind, sluggish after years of despair, suddenly kicked into high gear. It was a whirlwind of memories, flashing lights, shouting voices, the confusion and terror of being dragged from my home. I tried to place Jenkins's face in that chaotic memory, but it was all a blur. All I knew was that this new piece of information, combined with Max's violent reaction, felt like something more than a coincidence. It felt like a key turning in a lock I didn't even know existed. As if summoned by my thoughts, Jenkins reappeared at the far end of the yard, and Max's growl returned instantly, sharp and unrelenting. Ramirez's eyes narrowed. "That's not right," he muttered, more to himself than to me. From the tower, the warden's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "What's going on down there?" No one answered. We all just stood there, caught in a silent standoff. In that moment, I knew this wasn't just a goodbye. It was the beginning of something. And if my dog was right, this yard wasn't about to be my place of death. It was about to become a battlefield for the truth. Being pulled from a yard and taken to a small, windowless interview room felt like a reprieve. The execution was still scheduled, the clock was still ticking, but something had shifted. They let Max come with me. He lay at my feet, a furry sentinel still watching the door, a low growl occasionally rumbling in his chest. Ramirez stood in one corner, his arms crossed, his face a mask of concentration. A few minutes later, the door opened and the warden walked in, followed by a stone-faced Jenkins. The air became thick with animosity. The warden didn't waste time. He sat down opposite me and fixed his gaze on Jenkins. "Officer Jenkins," he began, his voice calm but edged with steel, "why did you fail to disclose that you were on site the night of Daniel's arrest?" Jenkins's jaw tightened. "Didn't think it was relevant, sir. I was off duty, just passing by when the call went out. I wasn't officially part of the response team." The lie was smooth, practiced. But as he spoke, Max let out a single, sharp, deafening bark that made Jenkins flinch. The dog's eyes were locked on him, the growl now a rising thunder. It was like he was calling out the lie for everyone to hear. Ramirez stepped forward from the corner. "Funny," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "because a new witness just came forward. An anonymous tip. Said they saw a man matching your description leaving Daniel's house before the first patrol car even arrived." Every head in the room turned to Jenkins. I saw it then, a flicker of pure panic in his cold eyes. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The warden's expression darkened into a scowl. He stood up, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. "We're reopening the case," he declared, his voice echoing in the small room. "Effective immediately. The execution is delayed." The air rushed back into my lungs. It wasn't freedom, not yet, but it was life. It was a chance. Jenkins shot a look at me, a glare filled with so much hatred it was almost suffocating. But it didn't matter. For the first time in 7 long years, the truth had a crack of light to slip through. And it was all because of a dog who refused to forget the scent of a monster. The investigation moved with a speed that was dizzying. The new witness gave a statement. The fingerprints from the crime scene, the ones that were never identified, were retested with new technology. They didn't belong to me. They were a perfect match for Jenkins. More evidence surfaced. A hidden financial record showing he was deeply in debt to the man I was accused of killing. He had committed the crime and framed me, the quiet neighbor, the perfect scapegoat. Weeks later, Jenkins was arrested and charged with the very murder I was sentenced to die for. The prosecution formally dropped all charges against me. The day they told me I was free, the prison gates, once the symbol of my death, swung open to give me back my life. And just beyond the fence, Ramirez was standing there with Max. My boy. His tail was wagging, his eyes were bright, and he let out a bark of pure joy. I dropped to my knees, buried my face in his fur, and just whispered, "We did it, boy. We did it." I walked away from that prison a free man. No cuffs, no guards, no walls. Just the open sky, and the sound of my footsteps and Max's paws on free ground, walking toward a future I never thought I'd have. Stepping out of those gates wasn't just about freedom. It was about redemption. For 7 years, the world saw a monster. But Max never did. He saw the man he loved, and he never stopped fighting for him. He taught me that loyalty speaks a language louder than any lie, and love is a truth that time cannot erase. I wasn't just walking out of prison. I was walking back to who I truly am. Have you ever trusted an animal's instinct over a person's words? What would you have done in my shoes, with only hours left to live and your only ally being your dog? Do you believe that some bonds are so strong they can actually bend the arc of justice toward the truth? I'd love to know what you think, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really interested to hear them. If my story about loyalty and justice moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories like this. Share this with someone who believes in second chances or knows in their heart that their pet would do absolutely anything for them. I promise you, I read every single comment you leave, and your support means the world to me. More incredible true stories from my life are waiting on your screen. Watch those next, and I'll see you tomorrow with another story that proves truth is stranger than fiction. Stay strong, trust your instincts, and never, ever underestimate the power of loyalty. I'll see you then.